And, I have 5 brothers, so I had to fill my time, So yeah, and I was fat. I was a fat kid, so I didn't do sports, so yeah. I was just always inside drawing.
Well, I am a fat adult, so don't worry.
Hey, me too, man. Me too.
You're listening to Enhance, the podcast dedicated to highlighting real stories told by real people.
Hello, Enhance listeners. This is Sam Brown, and I'm your host as usual. And today I'm joined by Connor Davis. He is a friend of mine that I met. We met last year, didn't we, Connor?
Yeah. During the pandemic.
Yeah, we met through some common friends, and we hung out a good bit, and we go out to bars and do our thing. And so today he agreed to be on the episode. Connor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Connor. I'm all about, long walks on the beach and sipping mimosas and, just living your truth and your best life. That's my mantra.
Hells yeah. Cool. Well, to get us started, I do have an icebreaker. I usually ask like a reflective question that's like says something about your personality or just like a deep thought question. So if you're ready for that, I'll ask you.
Okay, yeah.
What is the best advice you have ever been given?
It's not really so much advice as it is, a Bible verse that my grandmother told me growing up. I've always had an issue with understanding other people. I struggle with, I wouldn't say social anxiety, but more social just awareness,
Yeah.
So there's a Bible verse that I may be butchering it, but it's something to the effect of, and now I see through a glass half darkly, which the translation of that is you don't have to understand everything. You can take some time and be confused, and you don't have to get upset or feel angry about it or feel like you're stupid because you don't understand something, because, it may take some time for you to, grasp the actual circumstances that led you there, and then make adjustments to your life to where you can be able to comprehend the actual answers to your questions or why something happened to you. Just things take time, and I feel like a lot of people don't or aren't willing to give that time,
Yeah.
Everybody's rushing. It feels like everybody's on Adderall nowadays.
I talk about Adderall a good bit on the show.
Well, I mean, it's out there, dude. It's every time I go through a line, I feel like I'm being shoved from behind. And that may just be me, like I said, with the social awareness, but everybody just feels like they're on 110%. And just then at the end of the day, everybody's exhausted and mad. It's just, you don't see a lot of casual talks anymore. Everything's about something. There's no such thing as small talk anymore.
Yeah, there's always a motive to something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, the best advice that I've ever received, or I don't know if this is the best advice, but this has been definitely the most beneficial advice to me. I was working on working on a movie last year, and there were 2 people that I became pretty close to, and one of them was a cast member, and one of them was the director's assistant. And they were both, because it was the very beginning of whenever I got to start working in film full time, which is what I had always wanted to do. And the cast member told me that to him, networking just seems kind of like what you were just saying, is that networking always seems like you're talking to someone with an ulterior motive. You're never like actually just chatting with them. It's always to make them like you, to make them want to put you in their movie, and so on and so forth. And he said that he doesn't like doing that because it makes him feel like slimy, like it makes him feel like a snake, And he said that he just feels like his hard work should be show enough and should be network enough. And I really, really liked that. And then the director's assistant, on a completely different, like on the complete opposite end of the advice, said that if there's something you want, just ask. Because people aren't going to say no in this industry. The most they would do is not respond to you, and then you ask again later. But you have to know who to ask for what it is you're trying to accomplish. And I've used both of those sets of advice so much in my career, and I wouldn't be where I am today if it wouldn't have been for me hearing that advice and pushing for it, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy how much things have changed, because I mean, you telling that story brings up something that my grandfather, who is a very, he's a Bible thumping Christian, who's very raised 3 kids, just a hardworking man, 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts, not very approachable, couldn't really talk to him about anything. And you knew that he loved you, but you always knew it's because it was a sense of family, and it's not because he liked you. He didn't enjoy your company. But he always told me when I was growing up, if you have to ask for something, you don't deserve it. And I don't think that rings true anymore. It may have back then, but I feel like now, and it's not all people, but there's a large portion of people that are only looking out for themselves anymore.
Yeah.
And they'll go if they see. It doesn't matter if they see you doing hard work or if they see you trying to better yourself. A lot of people will just take advantage of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, and it's not everybody, but that's why you see such a disparity between, like a great example is our current situation with our economic climate, where the 1% holds. I forget the actual number, but I feel like it's like high 60s, like the high 60th percentile of all of the wealth, and it's like. That's not because they're doing the work. It's because they're already on top and they don't want to make any changes. They're comfortable with where they are. It rings true everywhere, because if the 1% are holding all their straws to their chest, then that means everybody else has to do the same. Because if you're not getting any, like, even if you're a good person and you're trying to help people out and you have the ability to, it's not, you run out of funds immediately. What's $3 million anymore?
Yeah.
That's nothing. You can't start a business with $3 million. Like a real business in the New York Stock Exchange, you can't. $3 million, they spit on that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just it's almost impossible to be a good person anymore.
Yeah. It is very hard, because like I have all of these dreams and things that I think would be really awesome for me to be able to do to help the world and make the world a better place. But I did not start off my life rich. I started off very, very poor. And now I'm in the like working middle class, which apparently there's it's a 4-class system now. That's how separated everything is. And I'm making the best money that I've ever made my entire life, but I'm still in the quote unquote working middle class. Not even the middle class, just the working middle class. So
I get that. It's crazy the way the world works, and it's crazy how long it's worked like this without anybody really noticing. And it's been a slow transition.
I think we could talk about that for hours, but I think we'll go ahead and transition into the topic for today. So today, Connor and I are going to be talking about art, but specifically art's impact on life and the healing process, dealing with trauma, dealing with anxiety, and so on and so forth from there. Because Connor, you're an artist, so why don't you tell us a little bit about like how did you get started doing art and what led you to the art style that you use today?
Well, I started probably when I was younger. My mom was either in school or working. She was a very hard-working woman. My dad owned his own business, so he wasn't really around that often. So I spent a lot of my time with my grandfather and my grandmother. And my dad's father, my grandfather that I spent the time with, worked at a print shop, and I would go there during summers. I'd walk there because it wasn't too far from my house, and I'd spend afternoons and mornings with him, and I'd go home for lunch or whatever, and I'd just help him out in the print shop. And he always did fish. He was a sport fisherman, and he loved scuba diving, so he'd catch fish and come home and he'd paint them, and then he'd do prints of them. And I always liked the style, but prints are like, they're an enormous machine makes them. It's not very easy to it's not very cheap to get the palettes that the copper palettes that you need to etch into them. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing was I tried to copy the print style with pen. So, I love lines. I love cross hatching. I love, taking time and really getting in with finite details. And I think I've just always been like that. I never really did. I always took art class in school, but I never really liked it. There was always a subject, and I'm not very good with subjects. When I sit down, I just start drawing, and whatever it becomes is, that's what it is.
Yeah.
So when you give me this subject, it's my brain struggles to, because if you give me something, I'm trying to give you exactly what you want, because I have a picture in my head of what you want. So, but that's how I started, just young, not really having anything to do.
I do like what you said there about not being able to stick to a subject. And that's something that I experience a lot in my writing. So I haven't really spoken a whole lot about being a writer, but I do love to write. And I've been able to use it in my career a little bit before I jumped into film. So I was, writing for marketing, because I did marketing for a couple of years before jumping into film. And I would write social media posts, blog posts, edit stuff. And then in college, I also, one of my poems got published in a literary journal. And it was like a small one, like a college-based one. So let me preface that before I make it sound like it was some big fancy thing. But
hey man, all wins are wins.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was really cool. I mean, and the girl that ran the literary journal at the school, like, it was one that had died out and was no longer being ran, and it stopped like years ago. And so she completely revamped it, and she's a hard ass. Like, she is not just going to put something with her name on it. Like, she's not going to put just anything that is just shit with her, like, in with something that has her name on it. So when she was like, I like this poem, I want to put it in there, I was like, okay, cool. So this poem's awesome. Like, this is the good one. And it was my favorite one out of the ones I had submitted to her. But right now I'm currently working on a script that a couple of mentors of mine, the director's assistant that I mentioned earlier, she's actually a director now. And she's gotten to direct her very first feature-length film. And so she's reading a very early draft of my script just to see if it's something she'd be interested in directing. And then one of my old bosses that's a line producer is reading it to give me some feedback. So I've got some cool stuff going. But similar to you, whenever I get a concept in mind of something I want to write, I never... like, I don't know what the subject, quote unquote, is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have a concept in mind, or I have a beginning in mind, and I'll write the beginning, but then from there, I just kind of like type, and then whatever comes out, comes out. And so I think that's really cool that, some people, they can sit down and you tell them, all right, write me a paper that is in this format about this subject. And they can sit down and do it, not me. Like, I'm going to run all over the place. But you told me to write a story where I have complete creative freedom and I can do whatever I want from start to finish. I can do that. Like, I can do that anytime, any day,
There's a, when you're doing, this is completely away from the subject, but archery, Olympic level archery, when you're just in the woods and you're shooting a bow and arrow, you're lining up the shot and waiting for the right time, right?
Yeah.
You're not like, you're waiting, you're holding it until you get to the perfect position and you let go. With the Olympic archery, you're told when to shoot.
Yeah.
So, you have to learn to, sit there. It's much harder, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
To sit there and accurately be told exactly when you're supposed to fire. And that's how it is with art. Freeform it becomes more natural, and it's a lot more messy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to take away parts and edit out parts because it doesn't really flow with, the end of it. But I feel like some of the most beautiful things in life happen on accident,
Yeah.
And, everything's not going to be the best. but you're an artist. You're supposed to keep creating. It's a journey. It's not about sitting there and being like, all right, I'm going to make this perfect piece and everybody's going to be impressed. No, it's like you're trying to constantly outdo what you're doing. And, I feel like, if you're a competitive person, then yeah, you can compete against other people. But if you're not that type of person like me, I'm not very competitive. I don't really mind being beaten.
Yeah, me either.
I'm more of the person that I like to impress myself. Yeah. I like to sit down and be like, I didn't think I could actually do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes 60 hours and sometimes it's an afternoon.
Tell me a little bit about how you developed. So I know you said that you were interested, that from a very early age, when you very first started doing it, you really liked working with, almost like a scribble style, like pen lines, stuff like that. So how has that developed over time, starting from there to where you are now?
Well, I like permanence. I've had a weird life. When I was young, my life was very structured. My parents were together, and I always knew what was happening. All of my life was planned for me. And then around middle school, everything changed, and it changed really quickly. And I was kind of let go. I went from this child who had every part of his life was told what to do and where to be, to basically not looking out for myself. My dad was there and my brothers were there, but I wasn't monitored at all.
Yeah.
And, I was a relatively good kid. I didn't ever try and do any bad. I wasn't very interested in school. I wasn't very interested in sports. I wasn't very interested in video games. Over time, it became obsessive. Mm-hmm. And I've always struggled with addiction. And I think that it became an addiction in and of itself,
Gotcha.
Just constantly finding new ways to do the same thing, That's really what it is. It's a piece of paper and a pen. I mean, how many times can you sit down and come up with something different? And that's the challenge.
Has that kind of allowed you to develop a process whenever you sit down to do a piece, or is it still very free form, very free flowing? You're just letting whatever happens happen?
I think my process is, literally my process is I take a colored pencil mm-hmm. or a regular pencil, depending on what color. If I'm going to be painting, I'll take a colored pencil, something blue mm-hmm. that can it's easily masked under paint.
Yeah.
And I'll do maybe an hour-long sketch of what I'm going to do, right? And the same thing with the black and white. If I do a black and white, I'll take a pencil and I'll sketch for about an hour. And then after that, I get my pen out and I just fill the empty spaces. I do a little bit of outlining work, but it just becomes, all right, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to put on a timer for 5 hours and I'm going to draw lines. And slowly, over a 3-day period, it just becomes this huge, overwhelming thing of okay, how much detail can I actually put in here? And it's exciting. It sounds lame because in all actuality, I'm just sitting at a table. But to me, it's like playing Tetris or a video game. The same excitement that I see people I've rage quit art. I've stopped drawing for 2 weeks one time because I couldn't figure out something.
Yeah.
Slamming pencils down. So it's exciting. It's something that has always been here for me. And I think it's a better way of expressing myself. I used to express myself through being loud, being obnoxious, especially when I was younger. I said a lot of stuff and did a lot of stuff to get attention. Now I kind of can get my attention through a healthier outlet, and it's the exact opposite. It's not loud.
Yeah.
You have to notice it, and if you notice it, maybe you like it, and that's always nice. It's relieving. I don't have to be loud anymore to get some type of notoriety.
Yeah. That's another thing. I didn't even think about this, sharing this today until you just said that, and it just hit me. I also, whenever I was in before I went to college, I used to do shit to get attention so much. And like, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. You know, I didn't realize that I was like being this way, like pity me, feel sorry for me because I wanted attention. Like I never made that connection until I started going to therapy and like in college. So whenever I was younger and whenever I was still kind of in that phase, that's whenever I really started like getting into writing. And I had teachers, like my 4th grade teacher, like gave me a blank book that just had like, it was a very thin book that had blank pages, blank cover. And she said, make me a book. I want to keep it in here in my classroom. And then one day when you're a famous author, I'll be able to say that I have your first book. And I have the only, nice. Yeah. So, I mean, there were people like from a very young age that were like pushing me to go into writing, but I never really got into it until I was probably in like my freshman year in high school. And so once I got into college, whenever I started going to therapy and I realized that all the like things that I was doing that was kind of toxic in high school, where I was doing things for attention and I was being kind of manipulative and things like that. Really, my first therapist focused on behavior and how to find a different way to deal with whatever emotion I was feeling during that time. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I really dove deeper into writing. And those same stories that I wrote whenever I was a kid, I like developed them much more throughout college. But I would write like an entire book. I mean, this was like going to be like a 9-book series that I already had 3 books written in. And I would get about halfway through like the next book in the series, but then I would think about something. I'd be like, I don't really like how I did this in the first book anymore. So I'd go back and change it. And the book basically, like the whole series became this like montage of like, there were some really mature like adult themes, and there were also some kind of like childish, like cringy themes. And it was just very like fluid, And so I was talking to my more recent therapist. This was during like the very beginning of the pandemic, during 2020. And I told her about the book series, and I had never brought it up before. And she was like, why have you never said anything about it? And I was like, I don't know. Like, it just never came up. I'm here for my mental health. This is a book. And so she was like, well, tell me about it. And so I was walking through the plot. It's a fantasy, action, like sci-fi, all kinds of weird shit. And so I was telling her about it, and she's just like staring at me. And she was like, when did you start this? And I was like, in high school. And she was like, what a beautiful way to deal with trauma in a place where you didn't know how to deal with it. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, your books. She was like, I wonder what they say about you. And I said, I was like, they're just a story that I like. And she was like, no, they're not. She was like, you're sitting here and telling me the plot right now. And the whole time I'm just noticing how your entire time, like coming to me with like sessions and everything, your whole book is just about your mental health. And when she said that, it broke me for a little bit. Like, I did not write for like 7 or 8 months, and I completely trashed that series, because then I was looking at it from a writer's standpoint, and I realized it was all just mental health. But it wasn't a loss, because I can I've reused some of the characters, some of the themes and stuff like that. And also, like, I was able to go back and process like old trauma in an external way. Like, I could look at it objectively from the outside in my writing. So I think that's really interesting that you have found it as a way to like help you get out that energy, where before you wouldn't have found a way to do it like that. You said that you would have been very loud or obnoxious and things like that.
A pissant. That's what my grandmother used to call me. A pissant.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's really cool that there's definitely a common theme there with art being like taking the place of escapism almost, and like finding an escapism in art.
Everything's a form of escapism. Every time you see, like when you go to the gym and you see all those dudes in there, they're like 240 pounds of solid muscle. That's escapism. And it's everybody out there has a vice. Some people's vices are a lot healthier than others. I got a lot of friends that struggle with sobriety. I think that when you start doing something that you really like and it's unhealthy for you, it's always going to be hard to forget that, you know, especially if it's something as easy as taking a pill or, smoking something. The point is, at some point you can trade that bad addiction for something that may not be as unhealthy, or if you're really lucky, something that's healthy for you.
Yeah.
And you just have to focus on it's not what you're losing. It's just another way to get there.
Yeah. It's like you're transferring an energy. You're moving it away from like doing things that's bad for you, but putting it now towards something that isn't as bad for you or that is better for you.
if you can find something that gives you at least a tinge of what your current situation, like your go-to coping mechanism does, and you know it's bad for you, you know you don't want to do it anymore. And that's another big part, not wanting to do it anymore.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be ready to step back and be like, I don't want this life anymore. But when you do that, you think that you have to just stop feeling that forever. Yeah. You think that it's a loss. And you find that, you know, there may be something out there that's not as bad or is something that you like to do that gives you that, not that same feeling, but something close to it. So you can do that instead, you know, and especially when you're having those hard days, you're like, fuck, it's too much. You know, you have something to fall back on that's not killing you.
Something that fills your cup, something that, you know, gives you that energy that you've been lacking and keeps you from feeling exhausted. Yeah. Have you seen, so as you've gotten older, I don't really know, we've talked a lot about mental health before, but I don't know exactly in retrospect where you feel that you are in your mental health journey, but are there ways that you've seen your art journey and your art development, like coincide with your mental health journey?
Yeah, I've noticed that when I'm going through a rough patch, I don't have any real call to do any art. If I'm going through like a hard time, when I normally need it the most, that's normally when it's the hardest for me to sit down, you know? Because when you sit down, you got to be with your thoughts for some time. It's easy on the days where you're feeling good to sit down and, you know, do that thing you love.
Yeah.
But sometimes you feel like you don't love it anymore. You know, sometimes you're like, I'm ready to, especially on a bad day, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes there are just bad days you're like, I'm not wanting to do anything.
There's a lot of truth in that, and that back to the writing with like how it was a reflection of my mental health. One of the things that I had to do to be able to use writing as a tool to heal and to be able to develop my writing was that I had to accept that there was in some way it's going to reflect my mental health. Like in some way I am going to be embedded in whatever I write. And that's where I was finding the hang up before. Whenever I realized that it was all based on my mental health, I was like, I don't like that. Like, I don't want it to be just a reflection of me mentally. I want it to be a story that people can relate to and people can enjoy. And I want it to be like disconnected from this world. I want it to be like an escape. But I finally just had to accept that in some way, my writing is always going to reflect me. And so whenever I started working on the script earlier this year, it was right after I had lost a really good friend of mine that I've talked about a lot on the podcast. And I took my grief and I like poured it into that script. And if I wouldn't have done that, I feel like I would still be in a really dark place. Like, I mean, it's still hard because it was just earlier this year, but that script, I mean, I poured all of that hurt, all of that pain, all the grief I was feeling into it. And it is a story that's still disconnected from me. There's no way that you can say, oh yeah, this is about Samm Brown. You know, it's about fictional characters in a fictional place. Like, it's not connected to me, but there is still a piece of me inside of it. And it was my grief that I poured into it, you know?
Right. I mean, that's way healthier than going on a drinking binge or something like that. So, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, man. Life's about survival first and foremost. Unfortunately, it's really hard to survive sometimes. You think to yourself, life shouldn't be that hard. And then in the same thought, you go, well, it's really not that hard comparatively speaking to insert, you know, any time frame before, you know, air conditioning, for example.
Yeah.
Can you imagine dealing with some shit and it's 105 degrees outside and 107 inside?
No.
You know, like, Jesus Christ. How do you process any information?
Yeah,
if you're sweating.
Exactly. I'm a very sweaty person. I just sweat a lot. Yeah. So like even in air conditioner, I sweat a lot. So I could not imagine not having the like AC. Like I would not want to live in that world.
So I mean, it's like you feel selfish sometimes for feelings the way that you're meant to feel about certain things, because it does suck and it's not fair. But then in that same thought, your brain goes, well, it could be way worse. And then you start thinking about things that would make it so much worse. So it's just a struggle that I think everybody goes through. And I think some people are more affected by it than others, because I've seen people are from the same family, like brothers, that handle situations. Like they're raised by the same parents. I've known them my whole life. They're all good people, but one brother just can't handle the same things that the other one. Like, and it's, you want to think that it's like, okay, this family's a strong family, but sometimes it's just the individual.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just that person, and it's just the way their brain is wired. Yeah. And you can't really beat that out,
Yeah.
All you can do is try and enhance your threshold, because life's gonna mess with you. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And that, growing up, I feel like, your development, there's a nurture versus nature kind of aspect to that whenever it comes to having better survival skills than some other people. And growing up, it put a survival mentality in me that I had to break through therapy, because I was constantly looking for something to be wrong that I could fix in order to feel adequate and in order to feel like I was thriving in life. And so that put me in a position where today I can handle pressure so well. I can handle being under intense pressure. Like whenever I was in college, no one had ever had to do this before, or at least not while I was in school. But I was an RA, and a dude, long story short, I had to do CPR on him. And I just immediately I just tunnel visioned, got down, did everything right. And he was fine after 12 compressions. And everybody was just like, whoa. And I was like, yeah. But then that year I was also dealing with a bunch of relationship drama. And I was in a really bad relationship. And that was the end of the freaking world for me. I was dying over that. But somebody died in front of me, and I had to go bring them back. And that was fine. I handled that okay. So I think it's really weird what our world sets us up to be able to handle.
Yeah, it's strange because everybody would think that I guess I'm sure, because you probably at some point when you were having those troubles in your relationship, you probably confided in somebody, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had tons of friends.
And you were probably being weepy about it, dude. You were probably oh my God,
I cried so much, yes.
Yeah, and then in that same year, you saved somebody's life where everybody else is standing around trying to figure out what to do. 911 wouldn't have saved them. Yeah. That ambulance is 25 minutes away.
Yeah.
So it's weird. It's also It's strange because you bring that up, and I would probably be the exact opposite. I'd probably be like, "Damn, he ain't gonna make it." And I have lifeguard experience. I've been a lifeguard. I have CPR training, so
yeah,
I would have frozen up. It's impressive how different people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, just like people, to segue back into art, art is different between every piece. So what is your favorite piece of art? If you could pick one, if you're not able to, that's fine. Just tell me a few.
That I've done?
But yes.
Or somebody else's?
Well, both, I guess.
I have an artist that I grew up with. I grew up liking. His name is Alex Pardee.
Mm-hmm.
And his art and my art are nothing alike. His art's very vibrant and colorful and cartoonish. It's dark, but it's not the same as mine. But I draw so much inspiration from him. I remember I was watching an interview when I was a kid, and he said, every time I put something on canvas, I'm trying to show you something that you've never seen before.
Oh, wow.
And that's what he does. Every time he puts something out, it's something that in my wildest thoughts, I would have never come up with that.
Yeah.
So there's this, and it's sometimes it's ugly and grotesque, but it's still beautiful because it's not. It just proves to you. There's been a lot of talk about NPCs and whether they exist or not, and I don't really know if they exist. But I can tell you this: there's ways to prove that you aren't one.
Yeah.
And one of them is art of any form. If you can come up with something that I've never thought of, and I know I could never think of, then you can't be an NPC, because that's That's not me coming up with it, you know?
Go ahead and explain what that is too, just in case there's any listener that doesn't know.
NPCs in video games are non-player characters. So they're people in video games that you interact with, but they don't do anything. They're not a player. You're not interacting with a human. You're interacting with a bot, an AI. People have started, I guess, using it as a insult to people that they don't see as their own thinkers.
Yeah.
You know? People that don't think for themselves. It's just art is any art, you know, painting, drawing, music, singing. You know, as long as you're creating your own thing, it's art. Even if you're out there drawing in the mud, it's art.
Yeah.
You can do so much with so little. There's that, I feel like it was like 2016. There was that artist that was doing murals of people with her hair in the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
Like she would take a shower and all the hair that would shed off of her, she'd do like pictures of people on her shower tile. And she'd immediately wipe it off, but it's and that's gross for somebody like me. I don't like hair.
Me either.
But yeah, it's disgusting to think about. But it's also like that's a crazy, beautiful piece of art.
Yeah, very unique.
That you get a picture of and then it's never seen again. It's like communication without words. I used to make fun of photographers a lot because I didn't. It's just a picture. But then you see a true professional photographer and you're like, wow. That's I could have never taken that picture.
Yeah.
You know? I could have never seen somebody, or I could have never seen that landscape or that person in that way. I don't know. It's just self-expression is so beautiful, and it's lost on words sometimes.
Yeah. So what's one of your pieces that you would say stands out to you like above the rest, if you could pick one?
If I had to pick one, it'd probably be my bottom. I mean, I have a few tattoos that my friends have done, like in places I can't reach. Mm-hmm. So my brother did one on my back. My friend did one on my back. But for the most part, I've tattooed over 85% of my body. And I started doing it when I was 13. And I never used stencils. Mm. I never really drew anything on. I would always just want a tattoo and be like, all right, I'm going to put something on me.
Yeah. And
it started a lot of problems. I was kicked out of my house when I was younger because I wouldn't stop doing it. But and it's something that I do regret in a way, but I don't regret it in the way I think people think I do. Like I get questions sometimes like, oh, if you could go and erase all those, what would you do? And I'd be like, well, I'd do it again. I'd still tattoo my entire body. I just have different tattoos.
Yeah.
You know? And it's not like I dislike the ones I have, but it's one of those things where it's like, you know, if I could, like I have tattoos over tattoos. I'm on my third sleeve now. So this too has become like a work in progress that I hope never ends. And, you know, I hope I'm constantly able to add new stuff to it. And, you know, people have told me before that I probably have body dysmorphia because I'm obsessed with tattooing my entire body. I have kids, so I'm not going to tattoo my face because I don't want to be that dad.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like if you have face tattoos, then, you know, that's your decision. But as a father, I don't want to walk into my daughter's ballet recital and take the attention off of her.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be that tattooed father. I want her to have her time, and I don't want people just to see her as the dad that, you know, has an X on his face, or something like that. Yeah, my own artwork on my body is probably my favorite because it's the most expression that I can possibly do.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not wearing anybody else's art. Every piece that I have, I designed. Some pieces I made, like when I was young and I did my first tattoo. I did a stick and poke when I was 11. And then over the 2 years after that, when I was 13, I finally got one of my friends to buy me a tattoo machine. And since then, I've just been, you know, scratching all over myself. And I love it. You know, a lot of people hate my tattoos, and I get a lot of compliments on them. So it's a love and hate thing, but it's just me, you know?
Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, I think that this is a good place to kind of come to a close. Was there anything else that you wanted to add about your process with art, or is there anything that you'd like to talk about?
Well, the first question you asked me, you said, what's the best piece of advice I've ever had? And I thought of another one.
Okay.
This too shall pass. It's very, very minimalist saying, but I've been in some real pain in my life, and just repeating to myself, it's not the end of the world, this too shall pass, has really saved my life more than once.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, if you live your life by that, you're indestructible. Every pain you feel in your life that isn't a mortal wound,
mm-hmm.
you can grow from it. And you just have to give yourself that time. It doesn't have to be physical. There's a lot of people out there that feel like life is meaningless and there's no hope for them. There's no place in the world for them. And, you just have to remember that if you give yourself time to grow and you put the work in, you can be the person that not only saves your life, but you can go and turn around and save somebody else's,
Yeah.
A life in service is worth so much. A life where you got to take care of yourself, but, not turning your back on people, giving people a second chance, showing people love. There's a lot of strength in love.
I feel like the whole energy of the episode today is going to be okay. Don't hate people, make art.
Yeah. You gotta just be healthy and be happy as much as you can.
All right. Well, I feel like this is a good place to close. So thank you guys so much for tuning back in to Enhance. We have new episodes every Saturday and bonus episodes the third Wednesday of every month. If you can do me a favor and like or comment or rate this episode, all the other episodes, that would be really great, because we have a lot of good listens. Like, our analytics show that we have people that listen to the podcast all the way through, but we don't have many ratings or many people that actually follow us. So if you're a listener and you're a recurring listener, please just go ahead, hit the follow button, like, comment, and do what you do. If you want to find me on social media, I'm at Sammed if you do. That's Sammed if you do. No spaces, no funky characters, and I'm that on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. If you want to find the podcast, you can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Anchor at Enhance, and then on YouTube at Enhance Podcast. Connor, do you want to put a plug in? Do you want to say some stuff?
If you want to find me, I only have an Instagram. I stay off social media. If you want to find me and look at my art, you're more than welcome to find me on Instagram. It's right now it's carpetbombing.jpg. That is subject to change, but you can normally type in CB Davis and I'll pop up.
CB.
But it's just an art account of my art, and if you wanna go on there and see what I do, then that's all good. But yeah, that's it.
All right, you said CB as in Boyd Davis, so CB Davis.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Connor Brooks Davis.
Like CBD, but.
Yeah, CBD. Yeah, dude. I'm the mid-grade lead.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Enhance your peace,
Your joy.
and your existence.
Do